Nancy was never confident behind the wheel, and with Deborah having had a drink, neither of them could drive. After enjoying a night at a nightclub, they chose to walk a bit in the cool evening air before searching for a ride home. Then C, who hailed from a wealthy family, rarely ventured out just for fun. Nightclubs and parties weren't her usual scenes. It was Deborah, her lively friend, who persuaded her to step out. Deborah had teased, "Who knows, you might even meet someone interesting." While the night did introduce them to several new faces, not a man at the club caught Nancy's eye. In fact, a few were so forward that they tried to kiss Nancy after just a brief conversation. Concluding that the club scene wasn't her style, they began their walk home. The streets were dimly lit, and there was a distinct lack of people around. A slurred voice echoed in the darkness, "Hey, lovelies, care for some company?" The girls halted, and Nancy looked back, spotting a group of men who appeared quite drunk and intimidating. Never having faced such a situation, Nancy felt a surge of anxiety. She had no intention of interacting with these men tonight or any night. Deborah, although more assertive, had a hint of nervousness in her tone. "We're good, thanks. We're meeting some friends soon. What's the harm in chatting with us until then?" One of the men took a bold step closer, and his unwavering stare made Nancy shift uneasily, edging nearer to Deborah. "Listen carefully," Deborah whispered urgently to Nancy. "When I say we run." Nancy's eyes darted to her feet. Her stylish high-heeled sandals seemed a poor choice for a quick escape. Seeing their hesitation, Deborah raised her voice, trying to sound confident. "We suggest you keep your distance. Our boyfriends will be here any moment." The thug scoffed, "Oh, we'd love to meet these boyfriends of yours." "Run now," Deborah shouted, making a quick dash. Caught off guard, Lindsay tried to follow, but her heel snagged in a gap on the sidewalk. She tumbled forward, landing heavily on her knees. There was a short pause before one of the thugs taunted, "Guess that escape plan didn't go so well, did it?" Their laughter echoed menacingly. "Looks like we only get one beauty tonight," another cheered. "So, darling, who's the lucky guy you'd pick to hang out with?" Fear gripped Nancy. She tried to scream, but words wouldn't form. Memories of prayers her grandmother taught her flashed through her mind, but they were distant, lost to time. Suddenly, a commanding voice boomed, "Back off." Turning, Nancy saw a strong-looking man in casual attire striding towards them, his eyes burning with fury. One thug retorted, "What are you gonna do? Call for backup? Cry to the police about us?" Without another word, the newcomer landed a forceful punch on the thug and swiftly dealt another blow to the face. Standing firm, he warned, "One more, or are we done here?" Rubbing his bloodied face, the thug grumbled, "This isn't over." The group, now less confident, retreated, flinging weak threats. Turning to Nancy, the man extended his hand. "You okay? Can you get up?" Still in shock, she managed to nod, taking his offered hand, feeling its warmth and strength against her trembling fingers. Noticing the scrapes on her knee, he commented, "Got here a bit late, sorry about that." Rummaging through his backpack, he pulled out a bandage, causing Nancy to raise an eyebrow. "You always carry first aid stuff?" Smiling sheepishly, he replied, "Not always, but the basics like an EpiPen and a tourniquet. I saw a girl have a severe allergic reaction in the store. No one had meds, so I carry some essentials now." Max gently placed the band-aid over Nancy's scraped knee. "Are you some kind of doctor?" she inquired, her cheeks tinged with pink. Chuckling, he responded, "No, I work at the fire department. My name is Max." With a shy smile, Nancy introduced herself. As they walked, Max entertained her with captivating stories from his work, battling fierce fires, rescuing stranded fishermen from frozen waters, and even a light-hearted tale about saving a kitten from a towering tree. "You became my hero today," Nancy admitted softly, gratitude shining in her eyes. Max smiled humbly, brushing off the praise. Anyone would have done the same. As they neared Nancy's home, she hesitated before saying, "Would you like to go out sometime? Maybe see a movie?" Max seemed momentarily surprised, but then agreed with a grin. The more they spent time together, the closer they became. Max was always gentle, treating Nancy with immense respect. He came from a simple background, and just 5, he faced the loss of his father and had to step up to support his mother. With Nancy, he often seemed more nervous than heated, and as the days turned into weeks, Nancy found her feelings for Max deepening. However, this newfound happiness was shadowed by her mother's disapproval. Lacey, always concerned for her daughter's well-being, wanted the best for her. When she saw Nancy with Max, her maternal instincts went into overdrive. Using her network in town, Lacey learned about Max's humble background and his job as a firefighter. Upon confronting her daughter, Lacey exclaimed, "Nancy, are you out of your mind, getting involved with someone so different from us? Please tell me this isn't serious." Nancy met her mother's gaze with determination. "It is serious, Mom. Max is kind, hardworking, and dedicated to his job. Why do you judge him by his financial status? Isn't love more valuable than money?" Lacey sighed heavily. "Because life has taught me, Nancy, and sometimes love alone isn't enough." Lacey was a force to be reckoned with as the CEO of an up-and-coming electric vehicles company. She was on the cusp of an industry breakthrough. All that was left was to secure a crucial partnership with a major parts supplier. The fastest route to that alliance? Marrying Nancy off to the supplier's son, Tony, an old classmate from her boarding school days. Nancy had sensed her mother's matchmaking maneuvers, but hadn't grasped the full scope of them. "Mom, I'm an adult now," Nancy snapped, her frustration clear. "Don't think I haven't noticed your little schemes with Tony." Lacey, ever the pragmatist, replied, "He's a suitable match for you." Nancy rolled her eyes. "Suitable? Tony, the same guy who wastes his family's money in flashy clubs and buys his way through exams. That's your idea of a match?" Lacey's stern facade wavered, and her voice dropped a notch, revealing a hint of desperation. "Do you have any idea of the sacrifices I've made to build this empire?" She turned to Patrick, her husband. "Tell her, Patrick." But Patrick merely grunted, too engrossed in some intricate data graph before him. Nancy knew better than to expect any backup from him. Though Patrick was the technical genius behind the company's success, he was, in many ways, a shadow in their family dynamics. Lacey overshadowed him, rarely giving him credit. There were rumors that she'd considered divorcing him, but his invaluable skills, especially in prototype development, kept them irreplaceable. However, Nancy felt there was something more to her father's distant demeanor, a secret or a reason for his consistent detachment from the family, and she was determined to uncover it. Nancy and Max's relationship blossomed, even though she kept her mother's approval a secret from him. In her desperation, Lacey thought of a new plan to break them up. She reached out to Deborah, Nancy's closest friend, for a private chat at their favorite cafe. The ambience was cozy, but the topic of conversation was anything but. Lacey began, "Deborah, Nancy's headed down a dangerous path, and I'm out of ideas on how to steer her right." Deborah's eyebrows furrowed, concern evident on her face. "Nancy seems happier than ever. Is this about Max?" Lacey nodded gravely. "Exactly. I've always supported Nancy's choices, her degree, her charity work, but Max. It's just a phase, and I fear she'll regret it." Deborah was taken aback. "And what do you expect me to do?" Lacey's gaze became intense, desperation seeping through. "You could help me show Nancy Max's real nature." Deborah's eyes widened in disbelief. "How, Lacey?" Lacey hesitated, then leaned in closer. "What if you tried to seduce him? If he falls for it, Nancy will see him for who he truly is." Deborah jerked back, her face a mix of shock and discomfort. "Lacey, I can't be a part of such a scheme." She started to rise, but Lacey panicked and cut in. "Just pretend, Deborah. In return, I'll give you a trip to the Bahamas and an exclusive piece of jewelry you've always admired." Lacey whispered, her voice coated with desperation. Deborah hesitated, taking a moment to weigh the offer. She sighed, "I'll consider your proposal." A few evenings later, Max was strolling home after his shift. The park where he had once protected Nancy was now bathed in the dim glow of the street lamps. A soft whimpering caught his ear. Approaching the source, he discovered Deborah on a bench. She had transformed her appearance, a different hairstyle, heavier makeup, glasses for added disguise, and a more revealing outfit. He might not have recognized her from their brief past encounters. "Are you all right, miss?" Max inquired, genuine concern in his voice. Deborah looked up, her eyes watery from pretend tears. "Someone just stole my purse with everything in it. I can't even walk home because I've hurt my ankle." Max instantly felt a surge of sympathy. "We should inform the police. Can you recall anything about the thief?" She shook her head, wiping away a fake tear. "It happened so quickly, but I live just a block from here. Could you help me get home? My ankle's really sore." After a momentary hesitation, Max agreed, offering his arm for support as they began walking. Deborah feigned clumsiness, leaning into him more than necessary. "Thank you so much. My name is Ashley," she said, attempting to spark conversation. "Max," he responded gently, adjusting their position for better balance. Deborah attempted to draw him closer, peppering him with questions. "How grateful you were here. Why did no one else assist? Your arm is so strong. Do you work out?" He shrugged slightly, overwhelmed by her forwardness. "Not exactly. I'm a firefighter." Her eyes widened in feigned surprise. "That's so brave." Upon arriving at Deborah's apartment building, she turned to Max, her eyes gleaming with a hopeful glint. "How about some tea? It's just upstairs, and I can whip up a quick snack for us." Max, ever the gentleman, declined politely. "I appreciate the offer, but I should be heading home. Please check on your ankle, and if it swells or hurts more, consider seeing a doctor. An X-ray might be a good idea." As he ambled away, Deborah's faux charm crumbled, and she angrily stomped her hurt foot in frustration. "Why so aloof?" she muttered under her breath. She quickly dialed Lacey's number, reporting her failure to lure Max. Lacey's sigh on the other end signaled her resignation to the reality. Max and Nancy were undeniably drawn to each other. On a starry evening while out with Nancy, Max delicately retrieved a tiny velvet box from his jacket. "For you," he murmured, his voice trembling with emotion. Inside the box was a shimmering engagement ring. "Will you be mine forever?" he asked, hope filling his eyes. Overwhelmed, Nancy blinked away tears and nodded. "Yes, I will," she said, embracing Max with all her might. Their wedding was intimate and heartfelt, avoiding any extravagance. Nancy insisted on simplicity, no fancy cars, no vast guest list. Only those truly close to them were present, her parents, a couple of friends as witnesses, and Max's loving mother. Nancy adorned an ungraceful white dress and radiated happiness, her gaze rarely straying from her soon-to-be husband. But underneath the joy, tension simmered. Lacey, though present, wore her disapproval like a cloak. Max's mother, a woman of resilience, felt the chill in Lacey's every glance. Leaning over to her son, she whispered, "Are you sure about this, Max? Their world seems so different from ours." "What's important now is love, Mom," Max firmly told his mother. Despite Lacey's cheerful attempts and emotional threats to discourage Nancy from this quick marriage, her efforts fell flat. Nancy distanced herself, meeting her mother less often to avoid constant arguments. Also, the news about Nancy's life trickled down to Lacey through her friend, Deborah. They found a snug little apartment in the city's outskirts, and Max got a used car for them. Oh, and as he's pregnant, a dimension of a grandchild. Lacey's phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the table. She turned to her husband, Patrick, with a blank face. Nancy's going to have a baby? Really, that's wonderful. When is the baby due? Patrick exclaimed with genuine excitement. You're missing the point, Patrick. I thought they would split up eventually. Now, with a baby on the way, their bond will only get stronger. We need to act fast. Nancy and Max were blissfully ignorant of any behind-the-scenes plotting. Their daily life was filled with simple joys. Every morning, Nancy would have Max off to his firefighting job, then head to her own classes. Come evening, she would buzz around their modest home, making it as cozy as possible and cooking up delicious meals for her husband. But when Nancy became pregnant, Max's protective instincts kicked in. Please, take it easy. I worry about both of you. What if something were to happen? Max implored. Don't worry, love, Nancy assured him with a radiant smile. We'll have a little helper soon. Imagine coming home to both of us greeting you at the door. However, as the weeks went by, her pregnancy demanded more attention. Frequent visits to the doctor meant she had to skip classes, causing her to fret over her academic commitments. I don't want to fall behind in school, she voiced her concern to Max one evening. But these doctor's appointments are necessary. I have to skip my cultural studies class today for the ultrasound. I'll just get notes from a classmate later and review them, Nancy remarked. Max gently touched her face. I really wish I could be there with you for the ultrasound, but I'm scheduled for a long shift. Can you manage driving by yourself and promise me you'll call once you're headed back? She nodded reassuringly. I'll be fine, despite being a novice driver. I'm always cautious on the road. I make sure to stick to the speed limits and never take risks. Today, however, was different. As she drove on a fairly desolate stretch of road, a large, intimidating SUV started tailing her closely. It would occasionally speed up, attempting to overtake her, and then suddenly drop back, as if playing some sort of dangerous game. Growing increasingly alarmed, Nancy mustered the courage to roll down her window and yelled, "What's your problem?" Suddenly, without warning, she felt a forceful impact from behind. Her car lurched forward, spinning wildly before crashing into the roadside barrier. The world seemed to tilt as her car teetered on the edge of a bridge. The terrifying sensation of free fall engulfed her, and as her car plummeted, everything faded to black. Inside her spacious apartment, Lacey walked back and forth, lost in her thoughts. The sudden shrill ring on the phone snapped her back to reality. Lacey Deborah's voice trembled, heavy with emotion. Yes, Deborah, tell me. Lacey responded, trying to sound composed, it's about Max's car. It's gone over the bridge. Lacey felt a wave of triumphant relief, but she hid her emotions. Was Max intoxicated or something? It wasn't Max. Lacey exclaimed. Nancy was driving the car. Deborah's voice broke as she relayed the tragic news. The weight of Deborah's words made Lacey's grip loosen, and the phone tumbled to the floor. Picking it up with shaking hands, she quickly dialed another number. Get to my place now. The chief of her security detail entered, looking unnerved. The gravity of his misstep reflected in his eyes. Lacey's voice trembled with fury. Who was responsible for this? I wanted Max out of the picture, not my daughter, he just. Lacey related the details about the car. He stammered, we didn't think to confirm who was driving. Lacey turned away, her emotions in turmoil. Anguish and guilt consumed her, but no tears came. Even as she grappled with the realization that her obsession might have cost her daughter's life. When Max heard about the accident, he was shattered. Even though his search team found the wreckage of the car, they couldn't find any trace of Nancy. Max himself joined the search for a few days. He combed through the riverbanks, his face a mix of desperation and hope. But eventually, the emotional burden became too much for him to bear. Grief began to consume him. No news of Nancy's body only deepened his depression. In his pain, Max turned to alcohol, trying to drown the agony of losing not just his wife, but also their unborn child. After a week-long drinking binge, Max knew he had to stop. He took a few days to collect himself, fueled by a newfound determination. He decided to investigate the circumstances of Nancy's disappearance himself. He scoured through CCTV footage and spoke to anyone who might have seen her on the fateful day. Meanwhile, Lacey got wind of Max's probing. Panicked, she called her chief security officer. "Get in touch with our contacts in the police force," she ordered. "We need to wrap this case up quickly. Nancy's gone, and while that's tragic, this idiot Max could ruin everything for us. He already disrupted my business plans, now he has to pay." Nancy's father happened to overhear Lacey's ominous phone conversation. For the first time, he felt a chill run down his spine, realizing that his wife had a hidden side that he had never before seen or imagined. It was a chilling moment, casting a shadow over everything he thought he knew about the woman he spent his life with. He masked his emotions well. Deep inside, he felt the urge to confront Lacey, but he knew he had to choose the right moment. Elsewhere, Nancy slowly came to her senses in a modest room. Fuzzy memories of a horrifying crash plagued her mind. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she noticed an elderly man looking at her with kind eyes. "You're finally awake. I've been worried," he said with evident relief. Nancy tried to speak. Her voice was barely audible. "Who are you?" "They call me Steve," the old man replied with a gentle smile. Confused and weak, Nancy now scanned the room. The humble setting consisted of worn-out wooden furniture and a cross on the wall, which gave her a sense of safety. "Where am I?" Nancy asked, her voice trembling with anxiety. Steve, seeing her distress, tried to soothe her. "You're at my place. It's been my refuge since my stepson Kenny forced me out of our home." He paused, collecting his thoughts. The drink changed him, made living with him impossible. He then whistled, and in bounded Finn, a cheerful border collie, his tail wagging, joy evident in his eyes. "Meet Finn," Steve chuckled. "I found him scavenging near a train station one day. We've been inseparable ever since." The dog nuzzled Nancy's hand, offering her a comforting presence amidst the confusion. Nancy managed a weak smile at Finn, who seemed to guard her protectively from his corner spot. Attempting to sit up, pain shot through her side and hand, causing her to gasp. What happened to me?" Steve's eyes held a mix of concern and sadness. "Well, young lady, I found you washed up by the river, clinging onto a piece of driftwood. You were out cold. My home isn't equipped with modern amenities, so I couldn't call for help," she whispered, appreciating his care. "Thank you for saving me." Nancy's brow furrowed. "I wish I could remember how I got there, or even who I am." As the days turned into weeks, Nancy's health improved, and she began assisting Steve with household chores. Finn, always nearby, developed a strong bond with her, often resting his head on her lap or following her footsteps with loyalty. When autumn leaves began to fall, Nancy brought a new life into the world, a baby boy she named Arthur. In the very room where she had awakened, an experienced local midwife assisted, ensuring a safe delivery. While grateful for the midwife's help, Nancy felt hesitant about seeking further medical attention or making her presence known to the larger community. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched or chased. One evening, as the sun set, casting a warm golden hue around the room, she turned to Steve, her voice shaky. "I can't shake the feeling that my accident wasn't just an accident. What if someone's after me?" Steve's old, wise eyes met hers, and he gently patted her hand. "You're safe here, Nancy. Memories have a way of returning when the time is right. Until then, take shelter in our little haven. We're family now. Each day, as Nancy carried out her tasks, she would often pause, noticing the shimmering wedding ring on her finger. She knew it signified love and commitment, but to whom? Who was he? Why wasn't he searching every corner of the earth for her? She would study little Arthur, seeking glimpses of his father. She had found no familiar features. The man she once knew so intimately had become a mystery. She couldn't recall his laughter, his touch, or even his name. One sunny day, Steve returned from the river not with a bounty of fish, but with a soaked handbag tangled in his net. Curiosity led him to open it, and to his astonishment, he realized it was Nancy's. That evening, as the room was warmed by a crackling fire, Steve brewed a pot of soothing herbal tea, sweetening it with homemade blackberry jam. As they sat sipping their drinks, Steve hesitated for a moment, then handed the handbag to Nancy. "I think this is yours." The familiar items from the bag made her head throb with flashes of memories. She pulled out her wallet, and as she saw her driver's license, her world started spinning. But it was a snapshot tucked into a slot in the wallet that struck her most. Tears rolled up as she delicately took out the picture. Turning it over, she read the message scrawled on the back, "Nancy and Max, forever in love." The name Max made her heart palpitate, memories rushing back like a storm. It showcased the joyful Nancy beside a man she now recognized as Max. With that photograph and hint, Nancy felt a surge of resolve to reconnect with her past. Looking up at Steve, her eyes filled with determination. She asked Steve, "Would you be able to look after Arthur for a while? I need to go back and find my life." With a gentle nod, Steve reassured her, "Of course, dear. We'll be here waiting. Go find your happiness." Nervous and unsure, Nancy made her way to the city by hitching a ride. The car-hearted driver dropped her off at Deborah's place, the one friend she remembered vividly. Upon seeing Nancy, Deborah's eyes widened in disbelief. She stumbled backward, almost falling over. "Nancy, how is this possible? We all thought you were gone. We even held a memorial for you." And then she saw eyes dotted around anxiously. "Where's Max?" They were paused, swallowing hard. "He's due in court soon." Confusion clouded Nancy's face. "Court? Why?" Deborah explained, her voice quivering, "They've accused Max of causing your accident. They say he tampered with the brakes in your car." Nancy's grip tightened on Deborah's arm. "We'll deal with that later. Right now, I need the court date. Max needs to know I'm alive." The day of the court hearing arrived, and tension filled the air. As Nancy sat in a hat and sunglasses, she anxiously entered the courtroom and took a seat, her heart pounding. She listened to the proceedings. Max stood, looking defeated and drained. Though he denied all charges against him, he seemed to have lost the will to fight. Having failed to find any trace of his missing wife, life had lost its meaning for him. Lacey had masterminded the entire case against him, creating fake evidence that left him with little room for defense. When given the opportunity to make his closing statement, Max rose to his feet, his eyes locking onto the judges as he spoke. "I never hurt my wife. I loved her more than my own life. Wherever she is, she knows that." Unable to contain herself any longer, Nancy burst into tears. She tore off her sunglasses, stood up, and cried out, "Max!" Hearing her voice, Lacey sprang up from her seat, her eyes wide with shock. The courtroom erupted into confusion. Ignoring everyone else, Nancy rushed towards her husband. Max's eyes were glued to Nancy, disbelief and relief filling his face. His hands tightly gripped the bars that separated them. The entire room was in a state of uproar, unsure of what was happening. Nancy called for Max's immediate release, and as the bars opened, they embraced tightly, tears in their eyes. Just then, Deborah stood up, her voice trembling as she addressed the judge. "Your Honor, the real culprit here is Lacey. She orchestrated all of this. She even bribed me to try and seduce Max to tear him away from Nancy." The room went silent as everyone turned their attention to Lacey, who had gone pale. Max and Nancy, holding on to each other for dear life, finally began to see a glimmer of hope for justice. Deborah, taking a deep breath, addressed Nancy again, her voice gentle. "It's true, Nancy. I tried to charm him, but Max's heart always belonged to you. I'm deeply sorry for my actions." Lacey's eyes darted around, realizing her plans were collapsing around her. Her face turned a deep shade of red, her anger evident. "You promised me, Deborah," she hissed. She then turned to Mike, her chief of security. "Back me up here. Tell them this woman is lying, Mike." Mike hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He was torn between loyalty and truth. With a heavy sigh, he finally spoke. "I can't lie anymore, Lacey. I've done a lot for you, but this has gone too far." The courtroom was filled with murmurs. Lacey's control over the situation had slipped through her fingers, and everyone could see the desperation in her eyes. Lacey was on the verge of defeat, but her last hope rested on her husband, Patrick, to defend her. Patrick, silent until that point, suddenly stood, drawing everyone's attention. "I struggled with communication because of my autism," he began. "It requires a lot of effort for me to understand people and to express my own feelings." She stared, shocked. She always sensed something unique about her father. The pieces were falling into place. Taking a deep breath, Patrick tried to gather his thoughts. The strain of the moment showed on his face. He muttered something to himself before locking eyes with Nancy. "I love you, Nancy, always have," he said. "Your mother and I never shared a romantic relationship. When we adopted you, she made me promise never to discuss it, yet she failed in her vow to always cherish you. In my younger days, I was passionate about engineering. When one of my inventions gained traction and earned me a significant sum, I attracted many who were more interested in my wealth than in me. Lacey was one of them, swept up in her attention. I couldn't discern her true intentions. After they married, Lacey, wanting the world to see us as the perfect family, suggested adoption, and so you were brought into our home at just 11 months old. At least he hired a nanny from a different state to care for you. However, as soon as you began to walk and talk, the nanny was dismissed." The judge was deeply moved by the unfolding story. As the details unraveled, the spotlight shifted to Lacey. In the following court session, every seat was occupied. Max and Nancy were present, along with Nancy's father, who tightly clutched her hand, tears streaming down his face, gratitude evident in his eyes. Not only was Nancy alive, but he now had a grandson as well. The family, once torn apart, was now together again. Deborah's damning testimony against Lacey was a turning point. Lacey and her security guard were both slapped with charges of attempted murder. When it was Lacey's turn to speak, she rose and faced her daughter. "I genuinely wanted the best for you. I genuinely wanted the best for all of us," she began, her voice quivering. "My intentions were for your happiness, but things went wrong, and it wasn't all my doing. If your heart allows, please forgive me." Nancy found it within herself to forgive her mother. However, the law had its own course to run. The sight was somber as Lacey, handcuffed, was escorted out of the courtroom, her family watching every step. Patrick's face was clouded with regret. "I wish I could have protected you more, sweetheart. I regret not standing up to your mother when she was causing all that turmoil." Nancy's smile was bittersweet. "That's water under the bridge now. What matters is now. Should we head to Steve's place?" And as he suggested to her husband, "He's asked us over for dinner. You know, he has been like a father figure to me. I owe him so much. Let's not keep Steve and Finn waiting." True enough, at Steve's cozy home, the two were already anticipating their arrival. Both were perched on their front steps, scanning the horizon, eager for a glimpse of their guests. Max's pickup truck rumbled to a stop outside the house, its engine idling for a moment before going quiet. As the doors opened, everyone stepped out, the gravel crunching underfoot. Nancy took a moment to introduce Steve, emphasizing how he had given her a second shot at happiness. Max, ever the grateful type, immediately enveloped Steve in a heartfelt hug. While Nancy, Max, and their little son Arthur ventured into the nearby forest for a stroll, Stephen and Patrick opted to stay back. The bond between Stephen and Patrick was instantaneous and unexpected. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with shared interests and experiences. When Nancy returned, she was taken aback to find her usually reserved father so animated. This chance meeting was the start of a deep friendship. Steve introduced Patrick to the joys of fishing and the thrill of hunting, adventures that solidified their bond. As for Deborah, Nancy had found it in her heart to forgive, though Deborah took her time to reveal the truth. Nancy was grateful. She had more than anything. She felt blessed to have Max by her side, a pillar of unwavering support and faith. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.